Hi, I'm Sara and welcome to Hen Corner. Today we're making soda bread, a great way to feed your family with nice, warm, fresh bread without having to wait around for yeast to prove or for sourdough ferments to get bubbly. So we're using, instead of yeast, we're using bicarbonate of soda to make the bubbles in the bread to help it to rise. And bicarbonate of soda always needs to have some acid with it to activate it and get the bubbles going. But what we're going to do to start with, we're going to mix the dry ingredients. So I've got a bowl here. We're going to go for a slightly more healthy mix because we're going to put some treats in later on. So I'm going to make sure the flour we start with is half white and half wholemeal, and we want 350 grams of flour. So I've got some white flour here, and I'm going to put in I've put in quite a bit more white than I planned. Woo, scoop some out. Okay, we've got 170 of white, and then I've got some wholemeal flour. We want 350 in total. There we go, that's 350 grams of flour. Then into the flour, we're going to put half a teaspoon of each of the following. Half a teaspoon of salt, because you always want salt in bread. Bread without salt is really not very nice. Then to give it that lift, we're going to put a combination of baking powder and bicarbonate of soda. Now, of course, you can make this with self-raising flour if you've got some. I just tend to use one type of flour here, strong white flour. So that's half a teaspoon of baking powder, and then I'm going to go for half a teaspoon of bicarbonate of soda. And that is our dry ingredients. Whew. There we go. Our dry ingredients all together in the one bowl. Now, I'm going to use a scraper to give it a quick stir through so that we've got the two flours, the white and the wholemeal flour, combined with our salt, our bicarbonate of soda and our baking powder. That's the dry ingredients. I'm just going to put that to one side. Now then, the liquid that we're going to put in. This is going to be nice and rich because we're using whole milk, and we're going to squeeze some lemon juice in to give it the acidity that's needed to work with the bicarbonate of soda. So for milk, we need 250 ml of milk. Now I always weigh my milk, so I'm weighing it into a jug here. 250 ml. It's much easier to weigh than to worry about looking at the measurements on the side of a jug and whether you've got it straight or flat and have you got the right amount in. So we have got here 250 ml of milk, and the acidity, we're going to use some lemon juice. And I've got a lemon, cutting it in half, and I'm going to just squeeze it in. You just want you know, maybe a teaspoon or two. Ooh. And then already you'll see that the milk starts to curdle, so I'm giving that a stir. You can use sour milk, buttermilk, yogurt. You can put a whole load of things in your soda bread, but generally it's a dairy and it's sour, and you want the acidity to work with the bicarbonate of soda. So if I was just going to make a straightforward soda bread, then I would literally add my liquid into my flour. But I'm going to make it a bit special this time. Sometimes we would go for a savoury soda bread, and it's really nice if you've fried off some onions to start with and put some chopped chunks of cheese in. You can have a cheese and onion one. But we're going to go a bit sweeter today. We're going to go for maple and pecan. I'm going to put a bit of mixed spice in. To be honest, it's going to be more like a cake than a bread. That's how I like it. Oh, there's some maple syrup. And I've got some pecan nuts. And this is about the flavours. It's not so much about the science and the quantities of the maths. So just go, you know, put in a handful of the bits that you fancy. So pecan nuts there. I haven't chopped them, but when you slice the bread, it will slice the nuts in half anyway. So mix the dry ingredients in your bowl. Add in the milk. So we're pouring in the milk that you might see it started to separate slightly with the lemon juice. Pour in your milk that had the lemon juice in it, and then you stir it together in your bowl until it's all combined. So you want to have quite a thick dough, and you want to make sure that there's no clumps of flour and then there's no clumps of very, very wet dough. You want it nicely combined. Now, it's not like a bread dough where you knead it and you work it and you develop the gluten. You don't need to worry about any of that with soda bread. It's much more straightforward. To be honest, it's more like a glorified scone, but it hasn't got the butter in it, hasn't got any eggs in it. So it's definitely more of a bread than a cake, but because of those lovely sweet things, we're going to have a nice afternoon tea treat. So mine's feeling a little bit wet, so I'm just going to sprinkle a little bit more flour over the top because I don't want it sticking everywhere. And then bring the whole thing together into a ball. Just using my scraper, look, my hands aren't even touching the mix. Bring it together into a ball, as you can see here. And then I've got an oven tray with a sheet of baking parchment, and that is going to be where I turn the bread out onto it. And we've got a spare bit of dough here, so scrape that off. We can pop that underneath the loaf. Everything's nicely combined. Everything's nicely combined. We've got our loaf of bread here. We'll tuck that bit underneath. Woo. We have our loaf of bread here. And then my final bit before it goes into the oven is to cut down. Let's see if I can show you how I do that. I'm going to cut down into quarters using my scraper, and that just gives a bit of space for the bread to expand in the oven and allow the heat to get through, baking the whole thing. That's going to go in the oven at 220 degrees C, and we'll see you later when it comes out. Hi, and our soda bread is out of the oven. Woo, very hot. So I'm going to transfer it to a wire rack to cool. And the reason we want it on a wire rack is we don't want any condensation building up underneath and making the bottom of the bread wet. Now, this actually took longer than I thought it was going to for cooking. I normally start it for around 20 minutes at 220 degrees C. This actually did take half an hour to cook. And the reason that we want to make sure it's properly cooked is if it's raw in the middle, it's not going to be nice. It's not going to keep. It's not going to, not going to feel good. And the way that I checked that it definitely was cooked all the way through, I put a probe thermometer into it, and I keep the probe thermometer in, I keep the oven on, keep it cooking until it gets to 98 degrees C. 98 degrees C in the middle on a probe thermometer. So this has been baking in the oven for 30-35 minutes to make sure that it is properly cooked. Now, I'm not going to cut this open yet because it's really, really hot straight out of the oven, and you really need to leave your bread until it is cold before you cut it, because the cooking process continues until the loaf is completely cool. So that's something I'm going to put to the side, leave it on the cooling rack, do the washing up, and we will certainly enjoy that with a cup of tea later on. Today we used maple syrup and pecan nuts with a bit of spice for flavour, but you can easily make a plain soda bread. You can make it with just white flour, you can put cheese and onion in, you can put any combination of flavours in to give your bread the flavours that you want and to enjoy for any meal of the day. So soda bread, nice and easy, very, very quick to make, and it's in the oven just in time for you to do the washing up and get the table set for tea. So lovely to see you again today. The recipe will be below in the description, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Do subscribe to our channel and check us out on social media. We're at Hen Corner on all the main profiles, all the main platforms, and we are going to see you next time. If you want to check out our blog, you can subscribe. You can check us out on www.hencorner.com. But we'll see you soon. Join us on the journey.